The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, thank you for joining us. We will be waiting a few minutes for others to join. Welcome and thank you for joining us. We will be waiting just another minute to allow others to join the call. Welcome and thank you for joining our webinar on effective e-billing solutions for law firms. Today, we will look at common e-billing challenges and offer a few recommendations that your law firm can implement for immediate impact. As we go through these presentation, please submit questions through the webinar site function, and as time permits, they will be addressed at the end of the session. The list of questions and answers will be published and will include any that we are unable to cover in our limited time today. My name is Suzanne Zimmerman, and I will be your presenter. I am joined by Seelan Naidu, our CEO, and Mike Ferdman, our COO of Managed Financial Services. To give you a bit of my background, I've been in the legal industry for 23 years, specializing in management of billing and collections departments. For the first 15 years, I worked directly for several Am Law 50 firms, including Gibson Dunn and Jones Day. Since 2012, I have been with IntelliTeach, and in the last 2 years, I've been developing our billing division. Sorry, I'm having trouble with the mouse. Okay. About our company. We are the leading global provider of intelligent outsourcing solutions to more than 300 law firms. In addition to billing and e-billing, we specialize in AR management, IT help desk, and IT managed services. Within our services, we provide secure, scalable solutions in class technology platforms. Our multi-service solutions allow a firm to focus on long-term practice growth strategies while we focus on improved firm profitability and cash flow while reducing capital expenditures. Visit our website, intelliteach.com, for more information. Why is e-billing important to profitability? We receive data from many firms, some who are current e-billing clients and some who are AR clients only. Based upon that data, we averaged the following. 27% of a firm's total billing value is e-billed. And of those e-bills, 15% can be rejected on the first attempt. Average collections realization was 3.5% for 2019, But when looking at a rolling 12 months at the end of 2020, because of COVID, we see a reduction to 87%. For the median AM law firm, that would be a loss of $36.1 million annually for 2019, or 49.4 when annualized under the COVID situation. Average days to bill is 46 days, and average payment 53 days. Based upon these figures, any improvement to either timing or realization will have a significant impact on your firm. Common challenges for e-billing. Managing growth, hiring, training, and retaining people can be difficult. Many firms are in the position of either competing for expensive, trained e-billers or need to train in-house without the knowledge internally of efficient processes and best practices. Stretched resources often miss rejections and appeal opportunities, unnecessarily lengthening your cash cycle. Internal resources may not have the knowledge or system capability to use technology to automate processes to address many of the causes for approval and payment delays. Based upon our collective experience at IntelliTeach, we have identified approximately 100 different best practice pointers that relate to the engagement to cash process. We will address 3 of these building blocks of an effective cash flow with best practice recommendations for each. These 3 steps are engagement, time, and billing. Best practice solutions for engagement. Valuable time is lost due to a lack of information collection and sharing at this point. Engagement is a foundational building block. This is the time to gather and distribute information that is needed to ensure proper billing. Gather it through your new business form and process and distribute immediately to appropriate people. If you're unable to require it to actually open the matter, make the need known and have a workflow that checks back to obtain this critical information as soon as possible. Some information to be gathered includes e-billing vendor to be used with the client and administrator contact information. This allows for the onboarding process to the vendor site to begin immediately, which can precede billing by 30+ days. Client billing guidelines, also known as OCGs. Have someone within the firm bullet point the salient items and distribute to the billing attorney, who should in turn give to any working timekeepers. Place these points on your intranet. Make the information as easy to digest as possible and make it easily available to timekeepers and accounting personnel. Timekeepers and rates. Getting timekeeper and rates approved by the various vendor sites takes time. Get a head start of 30+ days by obtaining this information during the engagement process. The earlier this information is known, the sooner the onboarding to the vendor site can begin. This information often only becomes known to the billing department at the point of billing, or even 30 to 60 days later when your collections department follows up for payment, adding unnecessary time to your cash cycle.
And I would ask a question at that point for you, Suzanne. If there are budgets that need to be approved, is this possible to gather that information at this point as well?
Yes, if budgets are required by the client, it is good to know at this point so that information gathering can start. Time. Due to lack of training or undefined standards, timekeepers may enter narratives that raise questions and cause reductions. A couple of ways to proactively manage this are: 1, provide time training as part of your orientation of new timekeepers, and 2, publish a timekeeping style guide. These allow you to educate your timekeepers on how to write defensively to justify the time spent and rates charged. Remember, the person approving the invoice often doesn't know the case details in the case of e-billing. They are using general time standards per task to determine reasonableness. Some ideas on how to write defensively are to provide specificity, such as quantities. A bill reviewer may reject a 2-hour time entry that says reviewed documents, but reviewed documents that consisted of 200 pages validates that entry. Justify rank, rate, and time spent. The narrative should explain why the task required, say, a partner instead of an associate, and therefore the higher rate. What occurred to make something that looks simple take 3 hours? Inform the client of work quality and necessity. How did the work benefit the client? Billing. Important information regarding client requirements is not easily accessible and therefore isn't followed. Submission and resolution of issues are delayed when rejections occur. To help avoid that, include those bullet-pointed billing requirements on the first page of the pre-bill pro forma. Whoever provided the bullet points for the billing attorney, timekeepers, and internet can also add these points to the billing system field that prints on the pre-bill or pro forma. Stylize it so it can stand out to the billing attorney during pre-bill review. Confirm that required backup documentation is attached and included at the time of submission. Nothing is ever rejected for giving too much information regarding costs. If it's a hard cost and of a substantial amount, attach the backup proactively, even if not required per the billing guidelines. Require same or next day e-billing submissions with required status checks throughout the process until the invoice is approved. Many billing departments will wait until all pre-bills are processed for that month to submit their e-bills. This potentially adds weeks to your cash cycle. Bills should be monitored for rejections and reductions regularly, especially when site notifications are not provided. IntelliTeach operational performance. The level of performance that we have employed will speed up cash flow, increasing overall e-billing realization and deliver additional profit to the firm's bottom line. To manage the growth of e-billing, we are able to scale up easily to manage the growth of e-billing. We continually are training a knowledgeable bench to be available to our clients. 96% of e-bills are accepted on first submission. Collections realization is at 98.5%. All rejections are resolved within 2 days unless outside of our control. In these cases, we regularly follow up with attorneys, clients, and administrators to ensure quick resolution. Our average bill time is 36 days, 15 days lower than a typical law firm. The keys to our success. Firstly, we hire employees with 4 years degrees in an area where e-billing position is considered to be a desirable career. Next, our team members are rewarded based upon meeting SLAs and quality expectations. Third, we employ quality control policies and procedures that include documenting client guidelines and issues to prevent rejections and reductions. Invoices are audited prior to submission to identify errors and ensure compliance. An example of that would be block billing. We have alerts and notifications automated to ensure that maintenance precedes the billing. This includes new and changes to matters, timekeepers, rates, budgets, etc. We offer a feedback loop to individual timekeepers to prevent recurring issues. We leverage our industry exposure to adopt best practices to refine our operational procedures and discipline. Our IRIS business intelligence software enables us to use data to improve billing cycles and cash cycles and to provide statistical reporting to support better business decisions.
All right. If there are questions, you can type them in. There's a little question mark on the attendee panel. You can click on that. It gives you the opportunity to ask questions. The first one that was posed is you had mentioned timekeeper or attorney training.
Yes.
And I think you also answered kind of the question. That's one of the most common things we see that causes delays and rejections or just problems is that lack of a 360-degree feedback loop where attorneys who make the same billing mistakes month over month aren't given the feedback as to what they did that they can correct themselves and therefore not repeat that mistake again and again. Block billing. If you instruct them on the fact that they can't do that and how they should correctly do that, you now have eliminated a repeat resource. And I hope, Suzanne, I'm going to open it up to you that I correctly answered that question for that person.
Yes, so that's exactly right. Tracking the individual errors for a timekeeper and giving that feedback to that timekeeper and how to prevent that is really key to minimizing rejections and reductions.
Great. You touched on attachments and that lack of attachments and documentation can generate, I guess, rejections. What's a best practice for, should they be stored in a certain place so that they're available? How do you help prevent the fact that if you don't have that information, it delays everything, or if it's submitted without it, obviously you have a problem? Is there a best practice for that?
Yes, the best practice would be to have a shared drive that is used by AP to save the copies of the bills, but that can also be accessed by billing or e-billing during the submission process.
Excellent. You mentioned monitoring after submission. Why would you need to monitor after? Is that because a status an approved status can change even after it's approved? It can change, or is there other reasons that you would be monitoring submissions along the way after approval or after submission? What drives that idea that you need to monitor that?
Sure. So you may get an immediate rejection, and most rejections are immediate, but I've seen rejections 2 weeks down the line. It shows as accepted or e-billed, not approved. I mean, once it's approved, you're okay. But until you actually have a period of time go by where it still stays within the review process or approved process, it should be monitored. We also monitor it to make sure that when the time comes that there are reductions, that we are on top of those appeals right away.
All right. If there's any other questions that arise about how to manage any particular part of the process, happy to jump in on that. Here's one. How do you handle clients that are close to their budget?
So we have, first of all, we have a tool that we use to let us know when someone is approaching their budget. So depending on the firm's preference, let's say that the budget when the spend on the budget, so that would be the WIP plus anything billed, is at 75% of the budget, we would receive a prompt to go to the billing attorney and get a revised budget. So we would want to get that budget increased before we get any closer to that cap.
Okay. Next question was, how can a billing supervisor manage their e-biller submissions?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I think it may have to do with the timing. How can you make sure that that they're being submitted at the time that the billing is completed? I think just making that part of the regular process. I know what happens often is that after a period of time, sometimes even when the collections department gets involved, you find out the bill was never submitted. So it may, it may pertain to that. We and teleteach and something obviously it could be done at the firm as well, is have a prompt of every time an invoice gets posted, and then just keep a regular list, and then periodically just go in and check and make sure those invoices match up.
Okay. Follow up to that question by the same person hold on, it just moved. Is there a way to manage their workload?
I think I would have to know more about
We
this.
can maybe take that one offline and get back to that person. It might be a little specific. I can tell you that our methodology is that we know who each person is assigned to a group of attorneys. We know what their pool of assignments are. We measure, what all of their productivity stats. So when something was available to bill, how long did it take them to get to it? What was their submission rate? What was, all of those different things are tracked. We had to develop that. A lot of systems don't have that. So maybe you're talking about some way to monitor that. It's tougher if you don't have a system in place for that. Let's see. There's another one here. Are your practices for actively engaging in rejections based on your submitting invoices directly into the vendor site, or do you also have experience with eBilling Hub and Bill Blast?
Yes, we have experience with both Bill Blast and the eBilling Hub, and we do use that for submissions and validation purposes, but do not rely on it for actual statuses. We will go into the individual sites unless we have enough history with a particular site or client where we can feel confident in the information coming in. We feel more confident going directly to the vendor site to check statuses.
Next question is, what suggestion do you recommend for the monitoring process, especially for a firm with high volume of e-billing? Is the answer to have an e-billing team or specific roles put in place to focus on this area?
I definitely recommend having a separate e-billing department or staff from the billings themselves. The billers already have so many things that they're navigating and coordinating, that I think it is important to have a separate group, whether you have the separate group do these submissions or just the tracking and handling the rejections and reductions. I think it's important to have a separate group doing that. I think that you have to have set timings for checking the status. Like I said, the first day that you are submitting it, the person who's submitting it needs to to make sure that goes through. Within 2 days, I would check again, make sure that it's successful, that there isn't a later rejection, and then I would check it at least every three or 4 days after that until it's approved. Again, I know it's excessive, but to lose a few days on your cash cycle is significant. So we as IntelliTeach practice, we check it every 3 to 4 days, and then at least once a week after after the first couple of weeks until it's approved.
Okay. Next one is, do you have a process in place for invoices that have been successfully submitted but are not being paid? Often they are successfully submitted, but the client has not paid. Do you inform the firm of those invoices?
Yes, well, we customize our service to the needs of the firm, but yes, we do have law firms that we will track until approved and notify the firm if either someone there needs to follow up for payment, or if our collections team also does that.
Okay. When you say that the average, let me read this one again. When you say that the average bill time is 36 days, is that the time from the beginning of the month to the acceptance of the e-bill, or does that mean that from the time you handle the e-bill, there is an average of 36 days to process it through completion through the billing cycle?
I'm going to let Virgil take this one.
Hi. So that is the answer to that is the first part of the question, which is the average time when the time between a timekeeper's entered the time and when the e-bill is accepted. So it is not the time after the e-bill starts being processed. It's actually between the work time to the bill time.
Okay. Next question is, how do you manage timekeeper rate updates for the e-billing clients?
Sure. So we for new timekeepers, we have an alert set up so that the first time a timekeeper enters time on an e-bill matter, we receive a prompt to enter that timekeeper into the site and get the rate approved. We also can do the same for if a rate changes. So if a timekeeper last month was billing at 500 and at 600 this month, we also get a prompt for that. For new timekeepers, new matters, we ask that when we find out that a new matter has been opened in your system, then we follow up with the billing attorney to get a list of those expected timekeepers and their rates and enter those to the vendor site.
Before we move on to that one might also, the question might have also involved yearly rate increases. We do see that most firms every year take a rate increase, and that communication has to go out to your clients. Sometimes that's done prior to the year end, that there'll be a rate increase. But when it comes to e-billing, all those new rates have to be submitted and approved. Firms that I've worked with, and Suzanne's knowledge is deeper than mine, that process usually begins sometime in January or February, and often can cause a lag in when bills can be submitted, so that we see sometimes in April this blip of collections because stuff still needs to be approved, these new rates for the entire firm that took a rate increase. I don't have any suggestions on how to do that better. Maybe Suzanne, you might have been through this more times than I have. Is there a way to kind of alleviate some of that difficulty?
Yes, well, I recommend starting the new rate process in October before you get into your year-end push, and start gathering those rates from your billing attorneys, having them speaking with their clients to get those approved, so that we can get those into the vendor sites, 60 days, and at least 30 days, and hopefully 60 days before they receive their first bill for the new year.
Okay.
We regularly see firms struggling with, even at this time of year, still having rate issues. So it's definitely something that needs to be done in the fourth quarter in preparation for the coming year.
Okay, the next one is, do you have a process in place for clients that require accruals?
Yes, we do. We have a couple of things that we do. We are able to generate reports based upon our BI system, as well as we'll enter them for the firms. So we do include that in our services.
Okay, next one is, what would you suggest the ratio of e-billers to attorneys?
Well, that depends. I mean, we have a formula that we do, and it's not usually based upon the number of attorneys, but the number of submissions. I'm happy to to address this individually with anyone who would like to. But if an attorney has lots of edits, obviously it's going to be very different than an attorney who just signs off and says send the pre-bill. So I can't give an exact formula, but I'm happy to consult on that.
So it's workload based, not real necessarily attorney based.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Let's see, how long have you been working on e-billing and how many law firms do you work with? Can we take, I guess we can say that.
So I don't know if that's me personally or IntelliTeach. Me personally, I've worked with probably 30 plus firms. And since e-billing began, I believe it was in the year 2000. As far as IntelliTeach, we've been developing this over the last couple of years, and
we launched the program last September, October, and currently we have about a dozen clients and a pretty active pipeline. That by year end, I anticipate the number would probably be closer to 30 clients.
Thank you, Seela.
Okay. Next question is, how do you address timekeeper that have title change during their current year after rates have been approved? Ooh.
Well, for the actual, e-billing, we would just, as soon as we were aware, we would go in and submit the new timekeeper change for approval. But in addition to that, I would expect that the billing attorney will have some communication, or the accounting department, with the firm directly to make sure that when it gets entered into the e-billing system, that they have this, the approval from the client side.
Okay, and that might tie into this next person's questions. How do you handle new timekeepers working on an existing client? So that has to be submitted, and approved, right?
Right. So we have an alert set up so that the first time a timekeeper puts time on an e-billed matter, that we're alerted that day or the next day. So we immediately start the process of getting that timekeeper entered and approved through the vendor site.
All right.
The idea of this, as well as all of the alerts, is to get ahead of the actual billing process, so that if not actually the matter, timekeepers, rates, whatever, are not actually approved before the time of billing, at least you've gained yourself, up to 30 days.
I think we might have covered this here, but I think somebody was on the same track. I'll say it. In addition to annual rate increases, would that new timekeeper identification process also consider associate advancements? That is, when the rate changes for the timekeeper working on the same matter. So that's what I think you were saying before. If somebody suddenly has a title change and therefore a rate change, isn't that what they're saying here again?
Yes, so we have alerts for that as well, that will tell us when a timekeeper's rate changed on a matter, and we would certainly get right on it to make sure that the vendor sites are updated so those rates are approved and title change.
Okay. Next question: which vendor sites do you integrate with? Well, that would be whatever the firm is using. So when we work for a firm, whatever the firm's using, you know, I'll let Suzanne finish that, but I think that's firm driven, right?
Yes, exactly. So we currently work with, I want to say 20 to 25 different vendor sites. When we work for a firm, we integrate into your processes and your systems, and it's, you know, transparent to anyone that we're a separate company. So we would have logins and passwords provided by you for your different sites.
Next question. Are you able to assist with getting rates approved once they are submitted to the e-billing clients?
Yes, we will function exactly as you request. We regularly communicate directly with clients, vendors, and internal people as needed to push along anything that's needs to get approved.
Okay. And back to the 36-day question. The answer was confusing. Can you please explain again? So the time interval, yeah, the time interval is, I guess, what we want to define for them.
Right. So it's from the time work.
Let me take a run at it. So from the time a pre-bill is sent to us to when it actually is submitted, that's the 36-day measure. And just to clarify, it's not when we receive the bill, it takes us 36 days. We are currently submitting bills on, if we receive a bill today, we submit it in today. So it's the same day service. Our SLA on that front is 2 days.
Next question is, at what point should a firm look into having a separate e-billing team? You know, that one's going to be based on probably volume. Well,
I would say if your team is stretched to the point where a biller cannot submit the invoice to the vendor site on the same day that the pre-bill is completed, that would be the time to start looking at separating the two.
Let's see. Okay, so this is a, you know, kind of a follow-up. With timekeeper title changes, it depends on the client, right? Some clients don't accept rate changes due to title change. I suppose that's whatever guidelines, and when you accept a client, you accept their guidelines. If that's what's written in the guidelines, I don't know that there's anything that can be done.
Right. So let's just say this: if we get a prompt that a timekeeper title or rate has changed, the first thing we would do is look at the relevant billing guidelines. That's always step number one. Then, based upon the guidelines, then we would take whatever action. If it was not precluded by the OCGs, we would get in touch with either the billing attorney or just go directly to the vendor site to set up, again, depending on the firm's preferences on processes.
What happens if time is transferred to a client that requires e-billing? Will this be a same alert? So I guess if it wasn't originally known to be an e-bill client, is that the question?
Can you repeat the question again?
What happens if time is transferred to a client that requires e-billing? Will this be a same alert? So I guess what the question is it was originally billed as not an e-bill, but the time gets transferred to a client that requires that. Okay, how are you alerted to that? Would our alert system catch that? I don't know.
So we would be going based upon your billing system. If we are the ones that are actually producing the bill, the leads file, we would get the same prompt through your billing system as you would get, which would tell us there's additional time. Then we would follow the firm's processes, whether it's, whether we go, redo the bill, or whether we, wait until the next month. If you've already given us the bill and we're submitting it, we wouldn't know if more time was transferred. So that would be put back into WIP and included on the next bill.
Okay. How many of the law firms that you work with are on the AmLaw 50 list? I guess that's a question for Seelan.
We're currently working with 3.
I believe that's right.
Yep. Next question, will e-builders handle appeals, touch base with attorneys on appeal, and if so, will the e-billers resubmit the appeal themselves? And how do e-billers handle short pay? So 2 questions really.
Okay, so when we found out that there was either a reduction at the time of approval, or if there was a short pay that we weren't aware of, at that point we would look and see in the vendor site exactly what was reduced. If it was something that we knew how to fix based upon past experience, or just a typical process, we would make the change ourselves. Again, according to the firm's preference, we would resubmit it. If we didn't know how to fix it, or it required timekeeper input, again, based upon what the firm's processes are, we would either go to the timekeeper themselves or the billing attorney, get the response needed, and then submit that into the system to submit the appeal.
Next question is, what specific area of the e-billing process do you find that the 12 firms you have been using for your services, I think they mean clients, what is the biggest pain point? So, hopefully that was clear.
Right. So when we talk to firms, the biggest pain point is basically staffing to stay on top of the rejections and reductions appeals. So I think that, it's getting ahead of that, the point of billing, to make sure that timekeepers are set up, and that rates are set up, and that budgets are, approved, and all the different, I would say, the maintenance. The root of it is the maintenance, but the result of it is rejections and reductions, and having the staff to monitor those, to stay on top of them.
All right. This might have been asked before, but are you similar to eBilling Hub and BillBlast? No, we actually use those tools. Those are software-enabled tools that can, in some cases, do a pre-scrub, but help you submit to multiple sites through a central portal. Sometimes they're able to help you manage, at the different stages all the way through to approval and stuff like that. So we use tools like that. We are not in competition to tools like that. Let's see. Okay, maybe covered this, but oftentimes invoices are short pay. Do you communicate this information back to the firm?
Yes, absolutely. We monitor till approved, if that's what the firm wants us to do, and we take whatever process the firm wants. I think that, the point I want to make is that we're customizing basically to the firm needs, and going according to your processes.
Okay. When you audit the invoices before they are sent to the client billing system, do you adjust entry language? And if so, is there an approval process back to the timekeeper and or firm?
Right. So if we were to see something in our review process that we knew was going to cause a rejection or a reduction, we would have standard things that we could fix on our own, such as if it was a block billing, for example. If it was something where we felt that the narrative was unclear or lacked the specificity that we think it would take to justify the hours billed, we would definitely go back to the timekeeper or billing attorney again, depending on what the firm's preference is.
Okay. And I think there was a clarification on an earlier question about time moving from a matter that to an e-bill, something that requires e-bill. I think this is
Right.
a clarification on that. So the question is, if time was on a matter that was waiting for a matter to be opened, and then it is transferred to that matter, would we see that? I guess this comes back to how do you make sure that you're catching that? Is there a process for making sure that that time doesn't just get lost in the system somewhere? Is my sense of where this question is going.
Well, we do our billing from your time and billing system. So if time is transferred into an e-billed matter, that's where we would pick it up. We're actually creating a leads file from whatever's on your pre-bill. So if something was added after that, that leads file was created, we wouldn't see it until the next bill. If it's a question of, we're waiting for a new matter to be opened and the time's waiting there, then we would, at that point, we would ask for an updated pre-bill to submit to make sure everything was captured.
Okay. Let's see. You mentioned 100 points as part of your best practices. What are some of the other pieces of the checklist? Well, rather than get into that, maybe we can make that available to people. But that's something, if you're interested in, maybe reach out to Suzanne. I'm sure we don't want to go through 100 points on here, but certainly happy to talk about that.
Well, I think what I can say at this point is we look at each stage of the engagement to cash process, and we investigate, what kind of issues there are based upon our experience of what we've encountered here at IntelliTeach, and as we encounter a problem, we document the solution as one of our best practices. So we have everything from, as we talked about, engagement, time, costs, pre-bills, billing, e-billing, cash, etc.
All right. I think that we have covered all of the current questions. So a copy of these materials and a link to the recording of this will all be provided to people that attended. I'm not sure what else we have to cover. I guess I can pause for a second here and see if there are any more questions. Well, I do appreciate everyone's participation today. Again, if you have other further questions, feel free to reach out to us. Materials will be made available. I think we're about to wrap up.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you receive some actionable items to improve your firm's profitability. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.